Hello! Last weekend I spent in Berlin, which meant I had the wonderful chance to roam through a English language bookshop, which we don't have where I live, and I bought some books. So I thought I'd do a little haul of, I guess you could say, backlist books. None of these except for one were published this year. So let's go ahead and look at all the books that I got. The first one that I'm going to tell you about, I've already started reading. I'm about halfway in. It's just a short little book. I started reading it on the train. I had not heard of it before, and it is
Darkness at Noon by Arthur, I guess Arthur Koestler, probably. The author grew up in Vienna. I don't remember, it says somewhere in the book. And I always feel like a real snob because I claim, even though my native language is German, that I do not like reading German books. And this originally was written in German, I think. I gave it a quick Google, and as far as I understood, only the English manuscript translation of the original text survived. This was written in the 40s at some point and is the recollection of a prisoner in a fictitious totalitarian regime. Heavily borrows, of course, from real regimes that we've seen in the 20th century. It's not an easy read, I found. It's far less gritty and gory than I expected it to be honest. As the guy is imprisoned at the beginning of the book, and I just thought we'd get horrible recollections of prison life, and it's not actually that. It's more sort of interesting facts about prison life. But yeah, I'm halfway through and I'm still, to be honest, trying to puzzle together all the pieces of the political intrigue that was going on. I'll let you know more, I guess, in my monthly wrap-up once I'm done with this. The next one I got, this is the only one that was published this year, I believe. This is Rabbit Cake, by Annie Hartnett. I'd never heard of this. This is in perfect condition. It was also not that much cheaper, not as cheap as books usually are in secondhand bookshops. Possibly because no one actually read it, or if they read it far more carefully than I ever do. The blurb makes it sound as if it's a story told from the point of view from a girl about her family, mourning her mother's loss, potentially, who died whilst sleepwalking. It all sounds a bit poppy, quirky and weird, and the cover would suit that as well. I only picked this one up because the cover appealed to me, and I think it's funny that when you Google rabbit cake, because I wanted to give it a quick Google before I committed to buying it, you just get a lot of crafty people making cakes that look like rabbits, so that didn't help me that much. But yeah, no, have you heard of this? Is it any good? This was an impulse buy. Then the next one is by an author who's widely known, liked, successful, popular, but I have never read anything by her, Maggie O'Farrell. This is her book called The Hand That First Held Mine, and this was bought by my egocentric alter ego because the blurb on the back makes it sound like it is about two women in two different time periods, one in the now, one in the 50s, I believe. And one of them has just finished university and is struggling the whole woe is me, what do I do now with my life? Which, even though I've been out of university for a little while now, I still feel that way. And the other one is sort of pondering possibly the decision on whether or not to have kids. And that's also something that I find myself thinking about sort of in my age, and my friends, and both these women basically don't want to have boring traditional lives. Not that traditional lives are always boring, but I think every millennial struggles with wanting that life but not wanting to be judged for it. Don't know. Lots of people have read this. I haven't. And funnily enough, remember the name, Maggie O'Farrell, recommended the next book that I bought. So it was this book that I bought, If Nobody Speaks of Remarkable Things, by John McGregor. Yeah, John McGregor, is recommended at the bottom by Maggie O'Farrell. Just showing how there's like this clique of UK authors, I guess. This one I had heard of, and I believe it might even be in my sort of Goodreads wishful thinking TBR list. It blurbs on the back that it's about ordinary life in a street in North England until something happens and life is not so ordinary anymore. That's very, very little to go by, except for that I've heard that it is beautifully written. Apparently it's written from different points of view, different characters, different people who live on that street. So it sounds like it's really well done in the design of the book, not necessarily the story is like the amazing thing about this. I can never decide whether I am more drawn towards a book because of its language or because of the plot. Ideally, I guess both is good, but this one I think definitely ticks the box for the nice language. So I am really looking forward to this, and I'm happy I found it in the bookshop. Then the next one I'm actually also really, really pumped about because I've just finished reading this author's most recent book. So this is Deborah Levy, I'm not sure, Deborah Levy, I'll just confidently call her that. This is Swimming Home. I just finished reading Hot Milk recently, which I've seen in all the bookshops and seems to have made quite a splash. Hot Milk splash. This Swimming Home, from just what I read, seems to be about a strange, suddenly appeared young girl who sort of crashes the summer holiday of a family, I think. And I really liked Hot Milk and was just curious what else Deborah Levy wrote. But I'm very confident I like the slightly experimental, unusual way she had in Hot Milk of telling a story. And I'm guessing she might have had even more free reign in a sort of less mainstream publishing house. We'll see. The next one is My Year of Meat by Ruth Ozeki. Ruth Ozeki is another of these authors who's written a lot, is quite popular, and I haven't read anything yet. My Year of Meat appeals to me as a vegetarian, is a story about two women and how, I don't know, I think a TV show that centers around preparing loads of meat influences their lives. I don't know, eating lots of meat, cooking meat influences their lives. I'm not quite sure. I just thought it was a good start maybe to this author, and I've been meaning to read it for quite a while, so I grabbed at the chance of getting it cheaper. Then another very popular one, of course, is The Virgin Suicides by Jeffrey Eugenides. I've also not read anything by him. I'm starting to repeat myself. I've seen the movie, so I will not butcher the plot because it's been a long time I watched this. It's actually not the storyline I'm most intrigued by, and the woman who was working at the shop who I was talking with whilst she was going through my books also said she had her troubles with the storyline just because the sort of the topic of suicide, I guess, was something that didn't sit very well with her. I don't think that's going to be an issue for me. This is also still in like great condition, and I do really like the cover. So also awesome shoes. So no, I'm glad to pick this one up. Although I must admit I was sort of in the rhythm of buying stuff. I'm not sure this is going to be the first one I rush to necessarily. Then I got Extremely Loud and Incredibly Close by Jonathan Safran for I don't know. I feel like I'm the very last of all my friends to read this. I tried Everything is Illuminated, I believe. I got that from the library, and I didn't really get into it. So hopefully this one is better. But the friend of mine who I went to the bookshop with, she grabbed it out of the bookshelf and suggested I buy this. Also, I was heavily influenced by the fact that it has all these like pictures, and can I find something else? Just more pictures, like weird spacing and just sort of a whole new reading experience. The story is about a boy whose father, I think, is killed in the throes of 9/11. I'm not quite sure, but I think the boy finds a key or some kind of riddle that his father leaves for him and goes on this quest. So the story itself sounds quite cool, even though I'm not always sure about like child protagonists. Sometimes it's a bit too cutesy and twee for me, but I guess the story is quite a grim one, so maybe no danger of this being too cutesy. What a segue. The next one I think is also not in danger of being too cutesy, as you can see by this amazingly old-fashioned crime cover. This is a Val McDermid's The Mermaids Singing. I've never read anything by Val McDermid, but spontaneously a few people come to mind who have recommended her books to me, and they all have very different reading taste, but all really like her books, which I think is, well, that's then quite a good sign, really. This is the first in the, let me get this right, I think the first in the Tony Hill series, Val McDermid having written or currently still writing a few different crime series. This one is has a clinical psychologist at the center of it, and in this crime thriller, not too sure actually, there's a serial killer who's well, walking around killing people, and the psychologist has to make a profile, I think, on him, and it sounds like quite nasty. Like there's a lot of torture and maybe like some weird sex stuff, and it sounds like quite nasty. And I don't know, in my opinion, if you're going to bother with a crime book, it might as well be horrible, but in a good way. And then the last one I'm going to sneakily put in there is one that I did not get in the secondhand bookshop, but I got in just a big like chain bookstore in Berlin called Dussmann. Anyway, this is The Good People by Hannah Kent. This is, as you can see, the author who also, oh, there goes my receipt, the author who wrote The Burial Rites, which I loved and was like really, really well received on YouTube as well. Loads of people were talking about that. This one, The Good People, is set in, I'm glancing on the back, is set in Ireland in the 19th century, and I believe it's the story of, well, I don't know, it's difficult because I've not read it. So yeah, I think this is the story about three women, a group of women who come together to help a 4-year-old boy who's developing all kinds of physical ailments. I think he can't walk anymore or doesn't talk or something like that. And I think it's also sort of witchy, mystical stuff that we already knew from Burial Rites as well, which I loved, and also so pretty. Such a pretty book. So I'm really excited that I got this one as well, and I thought I would not keep it from you, even though technically it's not secondhand, but I will just make sure to make it well loved by me. So those were all the books I read. Let me know what I should read first. I'm joined here by my dogger, sleeping behind me, so she has 4/5 of this chair, and I have a little corner that I'm sitting on myself. But that's all for today. I'm going to leave you with that. Let me know if you've heard any of the books. You probably have. That's the cool thing about these books in used bookshops. And let me know which one I should read first. I'll, see you soon. Bye-bye.